A nationwide test set to begin any moment.
Ooh, that's exciting. A nationwide test.
Remember, you cannot avoid it by flipping the channel. It's everywhere.
If it's everywhere, it must be something from our federal government. And sure enough, it is. It's the Emergency Alert System. It started in 1951 with Conelrad, a warning system to alert us if the Russians attacked. They didn't, fortunately. And then under President Bush Sr., we got IPAWS, the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. We were told the president could now reach the American public in just 10 minutes. Then taxpayers were billed again, another $100 million for CMAS, the Commercial Mobile Alert System, so government can reach you in your cell phone. And people like this. They say, thank goodness government does that.
Yeah, definitely, of course.
Spread the word when something is happening.
I mean, how else are we going to find out what's going on?
Well, I'll get to that, but the general attitude is, yippee, we're safer thanks to the emergency alert system. Except, have you ever been warned about anything by the government, that is? You often get warnings from us and from radio stations and word of mouth and Twitter and so forth about storms or other threats. But the emergency alert system? No, never. Even on September 11th, when we were attacked, the system was not activated. Although it existed for 60-plus years, it wasn't even tested until Jamie Barnett said, gee, I think we ought to test this thing? And at the time, you were the FCC's Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau Chief. You found out it had never even been tested.
John, I was amazed to find out that we had this system. It was part of our national preparedness. It had never been tested. And coming from the Navy as I did, we know that you don't expect what you don't inspect. So I wrote a memo. The chairman, Janikowski, sent it over to the White House, and that resulted in the test on November 9th, 2011.
And we have heard over time these tests coming through from our local TV stations, but that just may be the local station just testing it on its own.
That's right. And that actually was where the fallacy was, because I assumed when I came into the FCC that meant the whole system was being tested.
But the tests did happen, and successful?
I do think it was successful. We knew that after 60 years, we would be able to come up with some things that didn't connect the way they should. That's what we actually were looking for. About 90% of the primary entry point stations were able to receive the signal and retransmit it, which is what was supposed to happen.
How can you call it successful if it only got to 90% of the main stations?
Well, because it was, in fact, to test where the problems were. And to have 90% was not the success. We weren't looking for 100%. We were looking for what are the problems.
You call that successful, but this must be some government definition of success, because in the private sector, I think that's what we call a failure. Your nationwide test did happen in 2011.
The federal government will be conducting a national test of the emergency alert system.
But it didn't go nationwide.
The disaster warning system is supposed to be carried on radio and television. 2 p.m. Eastern hit a few snags, to say the least.
But Fox News viewers heard nothing. And some people heard this murky announcement.
Had this been an actual emergency, the attention signal you just heard.
DirecTV cable viewers reported hearing Lady Gaga's song Paparazzi play during the test.
So how is that a success if you're hearing Lady Gaga music?
You know, my wife is a school teacher. 90% on a test gets an A in her class. But I'll say this. We knew that there would be problems.
Good enough for government work.
We knew that there would be problems. And that's actually what we wanted to identify. And God loved the people who put Lady Gaga on. That was actually another rule that says you're not supposed to have dead air time. And because of a feedback problem on one of the satellite networks, he actually punched in. We got to put some music on there. Lady Gaga was the benefactor of that.
So why do we need this thing? I don't need to know that the president is in charge. I need to know what to do. And I've got a million local media that will tell me.
You know, but you can't do it instantly all over the country the way that you can with the emergency alerting system. So the alerting system is not supposed to be follow-on information so much. That's something that I think is a legitimate local news, national news type of function. But look at the earthquake that we had in a couple of years ago in the Mid-Atlantic region, rocketed up and down the East Coast. That was not much damage. But what if it had been? What if it wiped out New York and Washington at the same time? This is a system that's designed to work even when nothing else does. So a lot of your stations would have been knocked off the air, except for these, which have been hard.
But how would I have learned about it? You learn about it from your radio and TV stations.
That's
if
right.
they're off the air, I wouldn't learn about it. If they're on the air, I'm learning about it now because we're in the news business.
Actually, I have a battery-operated radio. People have their cars. That's one of the things about it. So this.
But
this is
I
a
learned
bad
on the
situa-
battery-operated radio, and Anchorman says this happened. We're giving you the news as soon as we get it.
And I
This
appreciate
is a boondoggle, hundreds of millions of dollars. The government must do that, and once it's spent, you guys never stop.
This is a great public-private partnership to make sure that our public remains safe.
During Hurricane Sandy here in this area, 12 hours after the storm began, people in my house got this emergency alert on their cell phone. It looked like this, and it said, "Take shelter now." But this was 12 hours into the storm. This is the stupidity of government. And I realize you've left government now, so I'm not personally directing this at you. But you've spent much of your life in government, and this is foolish government thinking, spend the money for second-rate stuff.
So here's the thing. You just mentioned what is a local alert, not the national alert system. It is the CMAS system. And one of the things that we have to include in this is training both for our emergency workers and for the people who initiate these warnings. So you're right. 12 hours is not acceptable. That was a failure of someone. But what I want to say is you still want to be able to have that alerting system. I appreciated the fact that I got an alert before the Durrett Show that said take cover.
Well, more training. That'll mean more money. Thank you, Jamie Barnett.